Hi there, my name is Patrick Gallagher. I'm the founder of Exhale Lending, and I want to show you how to refi like a pro. So, we are in a situation right now where the Fed has started cutting rates, and we are seeing mortgage rates dropping quite substantially. So, this headline here from September 30th, CBS News, the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates by half a percentage point. Okay, and that's the first cut we've seen since 2020. So, sometimes the best way in which we can look at the benefits and the options available to us is by looking at an example. So let's just stick with this example here. We have a current loan balance of $300,000. We have a current rate of 7.125, which would be pretty typical from 9-12 months ago, and a current payment of $2,021. So basically our payment looks pretty much like this. We're going from the bottom left to the top right, and we're going to be making this payment of $2,021 every single month for the next 30 years, unless, of course, we refinance. So what happens is you get presented by a lender a bunch of interest rates, and you get told how much money you can save. And I could look at this chart and I could say, wow, the 5.75 is going to save me $270 a month. That is a really, really good interest rate. I want to take it. Fantastic. Okay, the thing is, what that mortgage broker or lender may not be telling you is that there could be a cost associated with that interest rate. It's called points, and you have closing costs. So the 5.75%, now please, this is not a rate quote, this is just an example. The 5.75% rate could cost 1 point, which of a $300,000 loan is $3,000. Now, there are going to be other costs involved. There could be an appraisal, there's going to be underwriting, there's going to be title. I'm not including taxes, insurance, and accrued interest in this, but we could be looking at around $6,500 in order to get that 5.75% interest rate. Well, remember, there are other interest rates that are available to you. There's also something called a 0 points interest rate. That is where you have an interest rate where you're not paying any points at all. This here, in fact, is paying a little credit. But I like this rate. That 6.25 is earning us $3,750. So when we take into account the loan costs, this is actually a 0 cost interest rate. And why do I like that? Well, you're going to see in a moment. You're going to see that when we are looking at the 6.25% interest rate, we're not saving nearly as much money. We're about $96 short, in fact. But you're going to see that this is a better opportunity. Take this, for example. We're looking at doing an aggressive refi at 5.75. Well, there are going to be inherent costs of this mortgage of $6,500. So by the time we make the refi, we are already $6,500 worse off. Yes, we're going to be saving $270 a month. That's great. But look, it's going to take essentially 22 months after the refi for these lines to converge. So is this really a good option? Let's look at the other one. Let's look at the 6.25. And we're going to make an assumption that we're going to do 2 refis in the future. Okay. So the 6.25%, the first refi is free. And we are saving $174 a month right out of the gate. So we are already better off than the original loan that we're looking at. Okay. Now, I'm going to get into a bit more detail a little bit later on as to why I think there's going to be a second chance to refi. We're going to take a look at this though, but let's assume we do another second free refi and we eventually get to the 5.75% rate. Well, guess what? Our mortgage payment is going to end up being around $1,751. We're going to save $270 a month. So we are on a track for improving and saving as we go with this zero cost, zero out of pocket refi. Now, what I want you to remember is a lot of people are going to look at comparing their existing mortgage with the option that they could take. What I think we should be comparing is the options that are on the table. So if we look at the more aggressive, lower rate, higher cost refi, that's the top one, and compare it to the other option on the table, we can see straight away that, okay, we're not going to be saving as much money, but we are in a better cash position. And we eventually get to where we need to be. Okay. The difference is, 22 months out from the refi, we're still about $5,000 better off. Okay. Now, This is the thing. Why do I think we got a chance for a second refi? This is the most important part of this entire sale. We have entered an easing campaign. So the Fed has cut rates. Yes, that's half a point and cut, but they're now in a campaign, which means there's going to be more cuts to come. They've already said that we got two more normal sized cuts coming this year. That's going to be probably quarter of a point and quarter of a point. So we're going to be down another half a point by year end. Okay, that doesn't necessarily translate into mortgage rates, but we know that the Fed is cutting rates, and that's the important part. What else am I going to be looking at in terms of where interest rates are going? Well, the Fed is looking at the consumer price index, all right? The core inflation, as far as the Fed is concerned, is 3.2%, okay? But they are using 5.1% for shelter. Now, the method that they use to calculate shelter of 5.1% using this weighting is dictating this 3.2%, but this is a backward-looking number. If we actually look at Case-Shiller, which is owned by S&P, they believe that the shelter inflation today is more like 3%, which means our core inflation is at 2.2, not 3.21. Now, if we're at 2.2, hell, we're already at where the Fed wants us to be for CPI. Let's look at another a gauge for inflation, and that is the PCE, or the personal consumer expenditure. I get, by the way, this is probably boring, but if you're looking to refinance, this is really important. Okay, so bear with me. We're at 2.2 for inflation. Okay, the mark they're looking for is 2%. We have gone from inflation at 2021 from being around 0.5% up to 7%, and now we're getting down in August of 2024 at 2.2%. Well, how did we get here? Well, we got here because the Fed fell asleep at the wheel and inflation spiked in the first year, 2021 to 2022. The Fed only started raising rates in 22 and through into 2023. So the Fed basically was about a year behind where inflation was. And it's arguably accurate to say that they're a year behind again in terms of rates coming down. What I want to do is overlay these two charts, and you're going to see that when we had the inflation going up, the Fed basically did nothing. They finally started reacting, and now inflation is starting to come down. But as that inflation has been coming down, the Fed basically did nothing. They have fallen asleep at the wheel once again. And we have now witnessed the first drop in Fed funds rate. So this essentially tells you that the Fed has got a long way to go for rates to keep coming down. There are other factors at play as well. The Fed had really unrealistic unemployment projections. In June of 2024, two members believed that unemployment would not go above 3.9%, and 14 members had the belief that the unemployment wouldn't go over 4.1. So 16 of the 19 Fed members said unemployment is not going to go above 4.1. Well, guess what? Unemployment today is at 4.2%. And Powell said, we need to manage unemployment. We cannot have a crash in the market. We cannot have spiking unemployment. If we get a surprise in unemployment, we're going to have to start cutting rates. Well, guess what? We had a surprise in unemployment, and the Fed has now started to cut rates. Okay, so this is another really important chart that I want you guys to look at. This is called the dot plot, and it is a projection of where the Fed members, the voting members of the Fed, 19 of them, believe they are going to see the Fed funds rate by the end of 2024, by the end of 2025, the end of 2026. Now, this first red box here, we are actually here already. Okay, so we are going to probably see about a 0.5% reduction between now and year end. But by the end of 2025, we're expected to come down another full 1%. And by the end of 2026, another 0.5%. So we have got probably another 2% lower in projections and where interest rates are going to go from today. Now, there's one more thing to discuss, and that's something called spreads. All right. There is a relationship between mortgage rates and 10-year treasuries. Mortgage rates basically trade over the 10-year Treasury yield. And you're going to see that these spreads, this is the difference between the lower number, which is the 10-year Treasury yield, and the higher number, the 30-year mortgage rates. You can see that there's a spread, and this spread usually trades between 1.5% and 2%, usually that line. However, what we are seeing is that we have been above that trend line for quite some time, but spreads are tightening, which means mortgage rates are coming down relative to Treasury yields. Now, the typical spread, as I had indicated earlier, is usually between 1.5 and 2%. So we could actually see mortgage rates coming down by another quarter of a point and perhaps up to 3/4 of a point if the Fed did nothing at all. So we have a ton of things in our favor showing that interest rates, or at least mortgage rates, have a lot way to come down that you will benefit from in the future. So this is it. This is my presentation. I really hope this helps. Start your refi today. Do a sensible refi. Do a zero cost refi today and do it again in the future and save money wisely. Thanks very much. My name is Patrick Gallagher, founder of Exhale Lending. I really appreciate your time and the opportunity to present. Thank you.